One of the things that I have the task of having to do is to try to sort out Mom's belongings. And one of the things left behind was a house. And I have to check on it all the time, because what's one of the fears that could happen on an empty house?
Someone break into it.
Somebody will break in. And in some states, what do you have to worry about? What did you say?
Squatters.
There was a story that got my attention the other day. A gentleman, probably not too far different from my age, his mom passed away. And across the state was his mother's house. We got a call that somebody was at the house. The lights were on. So he went to check on it, and sure enough, people had moved in to the house. Calls the police, and they're like, well, if they've got mail that says they live there, you'll have to go through a process of eviction that'll take 30, 60 to 90 days. And what they do to that house in the meantime, we can't guarantee, because that now becomes just a renter. They've broken in. Sorry, it's the law. So the man made sure that all the utilities and everything else were transferred to his name, so that the mail arriving at the house would also have his name on it. He then waited until everybody was gone. And then he moved in. And since he's now a resident, by showing through the law that he has utilities and everything at the house, he then moved every possession of theirs to the front lawn, because he's just a tenant. He's not a landlord anymore, he's a tenant. And he was an avid gun collector, so he had his guns displayed on the table, cleaning them when the people arrived.
Well played.
And they actually broke down and said, we're sorry. They were hard up on their luck, it was tough times, and without having to become violent or threatening, any more so than having a table full of guns, they said they would leave. They collected up their possessions and they went on their way. Would it bother you if somebody moved, like well, right now, because this sermon is like 4 or 5 hours long, would it bother you if you came home and somebody had moved into your house?
Mm-hmm.
Would you ever do that?
No.
I'm going to wager that even on the toughest of times, you've got somebody that would lift you up and help you. But here's what's really crazy. You only have so much mental real estate. Do you allow anybody to squat on your mental real estate?
No.
Some people do, cousin.
I know.
And what happens is when we don't forgive people, we're allowing them to occupy a space in our head that they will own. Have you known people that won't let go of something? And it could be decades, but when they run into somebody and they're like, oh, I don't like him or her. Oh, what happened? 30 years ago. And suddenly it's like, oh my goodness, let it go. Sometimes it's tough to let go, but we have to learn how to do it. Let me ask you this question. If you only had a few days to live, see, I did 5 funerals last week. I did 85 funerals last year. And I'm probably going to break a record this year with the number of calls I'm already receiving. So I understand when there is brevity of time. If your time was only condensed to a few days, where would you go? Is there a place that's a happy place for you? Where would you go?
The beach.
The beach. It's such a comforting thing. The expanse, the sound, the comfort of it, just even the texture of it all can be a comfort if you're used to being at the beach. Where would you go?
I'd bring my whole family to the beach with me.
You would probably gather up family. I think that's appropriate too. Is there a location that you would go to? Anybody else?
Rock Springs.
Where is it?
Rock Springs.
Where's Rock Springs at?
Papa.
No, I'm sure I have been. It's just, there's, you cannot sling a dead cat without hitting a spring in Florida. I shouldn't say dead cat, but got so many. But we have so many beautiful springs that there are just places that really do provide peace to us. So Rock Springs, yes, I have been to Rock Springs. There's a part of me I think would go to Disney. Because well, I know it's too many lines, it's too expensive. The modern Disney is kind of, hey, Disney people, if you're listening, go back in time. We liked it the way it was. But there is something about Disney that harkens back to my childhood. There's such an innocence to it. Sometimes when I go, I just want to sit somewhere and just take it in that I'm there. I want you to go back to this moment where I started reading. In John chapter 13, Jesus is at the Passover. Realize we're a good way through the book of John, which means we're getting close to what? Crucifixion. Jesus becoming the sins of the world. So we're right at the Passover. We're days away, people. Days. What does he do? Well, I'll read it to you again. It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world. There's not a bus coming. He's going to leave the world through the cross. If you want to get an impression of that, just open your hand, put your finger just like this, and then run your finger all the way through. There are movies that capture that moment I can't even watch. Some of the last few movies about the life of Christ, I find it so difficult because of the vividness. And they want you to feel it. They want you to. But it hurts too much. There's a scene in The Passion where they stretch his hand out, and it's a very fleshy hand. You can tell this man had a meaty hand. But you can tell it's a real hand. And when they put that nail to it, that spike, I don't know what the actor endured. But when they press it down, you can tell somebody's really applying pressure there. Now, obviously, they didn't crucify him. But you have such a sense of what's about to happen. Jesus knows all things. All those images are flooding his mind. It's time for him to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served. The devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray Jesus. A betrayal is already at stake. These are men that are going to profess their love. They're going to recline at a table with him. It's going to be one of these beautiful images. But have you ever walked in a room and you just knew? Everybody can put on their best clothes. You're going to run away, and you're going to run away, and you're going to betray me, and you're going to deny me, and you're going to be the one that doubts, and that he knows. They're all reclining and making promises and hugging on him. Peter is the one who will say, "Never, Lord. You think you're going to die? Never." And he has to say, "Get behind me, Satan. Do not tempt me on this. I have to go through it. I will never allow it." You'll not only allow it, you will so break down that you'll deny you even know me. Oh, never! It will happen exactly like he said. Exactly. So what does Jesus do here? Do you know where we're going? Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. 12 men, 24 feet. You've only got moments left in this world. Now, I see the picture in my mind's eye. Sometimes there are pictures in churches. Sometimes we've seen pictures. Maybe your Bible has a picture, if it's an illustrated one, of Jesus with a towel around his waist. There's a meme going around right now of Jesus washing all of these different styles of 21st century people. There's a man sitting at a chair with a rainbow flag around him. You see Jesus washing his feet. You see the President of the United States sitting in the same chair, and Jesus is washing his feet. You see the Pope sitting in the chair, and Jesus is washing his feet. You see a woman who is obviously, she has work in town, probably on a street corner, and you can just tell, it's so stereotypical of her attire, and Jesus is washing her feet. And you see a junkie that is there and needles are all over the floor and Jesus has pushed them out of the way to wash that man's feet. It's a beautiful picture, but what we're missing from the biblical story is how long it took. 12 men, 24 feet. Even if it's just a minute or two per person, he's taking an hour? Your last moments on earth? And you're spending an hour cleaning dirt off of these boys? This is what's mind-boggling to me, because I don't think that the people who are going to abandon me, betray me, I want to sit down and do much with them at all. I almost want to picture him walking out going, I don't have time for this. You're going to understand in just a few hours, but I don't have time for this. I would want to lecture. I would want to go into dad mode. I would want to make sure that I had made my point. But Jesus is so much better than me. He drops to his knees. Jesus, what are you doing? Peter wants to be Peter one more time, and he wants to say, I will not allow you to do this. Don't you love Peter? He's always getting in the face of Jesus, saying something where you just want to give him a Three Stooges slap. Because it's just so ridiculous. And Jesus leans in and says, unless I do this, you're not going to have any part of the kingdom. It's not a threat. He's basically foretelling, if you don't understand this moment, you're not going to remain faithful. Peter's response is typically Peter, which is over the top, then wash me from head to toe, if that's what it requires. Jesus says, your feet are good enough right now. And I don't get it. I didn't get it. I didn't get it until studying for this lesson. Is it an act of humility? Is it an act of love? These men are in sandals. Most comfortable shoe in the world. Flip-flop sandals. If I had my way, and one day I will get so comfortable with you, I'm going to come in my traditional Wiley Lowe attire, which is a tank top made of cotton. Some shorts. They're nice 70s shorts, not these long shorts. I prefer shorter shorts. It was the Magnum PI shorts. Are we okay with those?
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. And I will be in comfortable shoes. That's my life. That is where I am majority of my day. The problem with wearing those shoes is your feet will get dirty if you walk through dirt and dust and mud. Why do you think they had ceremonial anointing of oil? Part of it was refreshing. Upon the head and the beard, walking in, washing somebody's feet. It was after a long day. How do you think people got places? Often walking. If you're thinking that riding an animal is better, you have a much greater chance of those feet not being clean when you're around some of these large animals. You get my drift.
It's true.
You have horses.
I do, yes.
It's just a pleasant trip through the field, isn't it? No, it's not. Why? Why clean those feet? Well, they're spotless. He's half naked. He has cleaned their feet, and they are spotless, and then they go through all of it. A meal, time together. He predicts his betrayal. He tries to comfort his disciples. All this is happening within a short period of time. He's going to preach. He's going to teach all the way up to the point where he is arrested, beaten, betrayed, crucified. The disciples run. They run, they sprint away from this moment because even though it was predicted, can you see them pushing their way through the crowd? Can you see them just crying, screaming, he has died? An earthquake, darkness upon the land. And they fight their way to get away, except for the women who stayed at the cross. Here's the scene that hit me. They have fought their way through the crowd. They've gotten away, and there they stand. And they are the only men within miles whose feet are clean. If you wanted to find them, how would you find his disciples? Nobody knew what took place. When Jesus is betrayed, there's no TV. There's no internet. Somebody had to point him out. Remember when he's betrayed? Judas goes to point, that's the one over there. Why? Because they all look pretty much, it's the same robe, it's the same hair. He was not in a white robe with a red sash with a sheep around his neck. Oh, look, it's Jesus. He looks like everybody else. But the disciples at this moment, there are 12 men who did not look like everybody else. Can you see them? They've gotten away. They're hunched over. They're trying to blend in. They don't want anybody to know lest they get drug away, beaten and crucified. And as they're looking down, they look at their feet. He washed my feet. He knew I was going to run and he washed my feet. He knew I would say, I don't know him. And he still washed my feet. Judas will be so consumed with this that he will hang himself. You can see the blackened marks around his neck. You can see the eyes. The one scene, if you've ever seen any pictures of an artist's portrayal of Judas, is they always forget to paint that his feet were clean. All the way to Judas. When it says that he showed the full extent of his love, it was to demonstrate that no matter who you are, where you are, what you've done, where you've been, he would wash your feet. He would forgive you. What, you don't think he... Okay, I've got a surprise for you. I have a movie of everybody's sins that we're going to play.
Uh-oh.
No, that's going to get awkward. If there was a movie of your worst moments, would you want it played?
Oh no. Oh no.
No, I wouldn't want mine. You wouldn't want yours. Jesus has the movie. And he saw it. And he still chose you. Just like you are. And if you needed to be cleaned up, he would do it. And if he needed to wash your feet, he would. He would do everything in his power to demonstrate his love, forgiveness, and kindness. There is a story that goes along with this that is in Matthew. And it's the story of an unmerciful servant. And I'll give it to you in its shortest form. In chapter 18, a ruler comes, and he's coming to collect his debt. And there's a servant that owes him millions. You know Dave Ramsey, you know the name Dave Ramsey, the guy, the financial consultant guy that combines faith and financial principles. He had a call the other day with a young couple. They're like, hey Dave, we need to talk. Oh, I need some help. And they're like, oh, what can I do for you? 401k? Man, we've got debt. Oh, everybody's got debt. Well, I'll tell you how much do you have? It's over $1 million. Dave was like, I'm sorry, what did you say? Did you buy too big? No, our house is only $250,000. What did you spend it on? Credit cards, education. Is the education paying for everything? Well, we're well educated and we're making good money, but we can't seem to get the debt taken care of. And Dave literally went off on them. And he said, I'm going to give you the strongest advice you need to hear. You can't buy anything, nothing, for the next 3 years. I'm looking at your salary, and you must put every dime you have toward this debt. You're living like you're millionaires because you've spent over $1 million. but you're not. You do have good jobs, but you've created a debt monster so big that if you paid $1,000 a day, every day, it'll take you 20 to 30 years to take care of this. Go back 2,000 years. Here is the story Jesus is telling of a rich ruler who comes in to collect his debt, and he says, "Pay me." And the man says, "I owe you millions. Be patient with me. Give me a moment." The ruler has the ability to have the man thrown into jail, because that's going to help, right?
Yeah.
And his family, because they are servants, his wife and children are now possessions. And the ruler's ready to collect his debt, and he's going to do it to a pound of flesh. And the man begs and begs and begs. The ruler finally says, "I've got so much. Okay. I'm wiping out your debt." How would you react if somebody took care of all your debt right now?
Happy. Happy.
Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Bezos, I don't care. You pick your wealthiest person, walks in the door and starts writing out checks. Would you feel better today? Walking out here debt-free?
For a little bit.
For a little bit, because we'll find a way to get in trouble again. We do. Moments later, that man goes out and finds an underling of his. The servant's servant. That's pretty low. And he says, "Don't you owe me money?" "I do." "What do you owe me?" "It's dollars." Equivalent to dollars. The man says, "Pay me. I don't have dollars right now. I'm at the bottom of the pickle barrel. You understand? I'm the lowest of the..." The man has him beaten, thrown in jail, demands that he gets paid. What happened? If I magically tell you you're debt-free, you're going to walk out of the door the same way you walked in, believing that you have debt. If you were sick and I said, "Oh, I've got power today and you are healed," you're going to go, "Wiley's off his meds, because I don't believe I'm healed." If Jesus forgave you, you would feel forgiven. It's why one of the things when we ask the question, what would you ask Jesus? What would you say to Jesus if you could see him 5 minutes with him face to face? "Lord, would you really forgive me?" You'd want the check to clear the bank. If the richest person in the world wrote you a check, wouldn't you just wait until it cleared the bank to go, "Yes, I really am debt-free"? The problem with this servant was that he didn't believe his master. He did not believe, because if he did, he'd be walking around going, "I'm debt-free. Everybody that owes me, forget about it, because no matter if you paid me, I don't have to give it to anybody. I'm debt-free." He didn't believe it. And he went around with that chip on his shoulder, still having that space occupied like squatters. Do you believe you're forgiven? Or do you hope you're forgiven? Do you walk around like a debt-free person, or a person who hopes that maybe God will forgive them? Because it will change your countenance, it'll change who you are and how you act when you believe it. Jesus wanted his disciples to know the full extent of his love, which means when they were at their worst, even before it happened, he knew it, predicted it, told it to their face, and as they are off in a crowd looking down, it was right there in front of them. Jesus will clean your feet no matter where you are, who you are, what you've done, or where you've been. And he does it as an example to the world of his love, his grace, his forgiveness. If you will believe it, you'll be able to forgive others. You'll be able to let go. You'll be able to evict the people that are in your head right now that are taking up mental real estate. Forgiveness does not mean that what they did was okay. It means how you see them changes. It does not mean they do not owe the debt. Somebody robs a bank, the bank can, we forgive the man for coming in, we realize he was in need. Does he still owe the money? Or does he get to keep it? He still owes the money. Victims over and over again. There's always great, good, feel-good stories of victims who forgive the person who broke in, who hurt them. One of the stories that will never leave me was of a family who lost their son to a drunk driver. And it was another young man who was all but homeless. His family had abandoned him. And in a night of partying, he killed this family's son. Their response was not only to forgive him, but to adopt him as their son. What do you do with that? It wasn't a replacement, but their faith compelled them that this young man needed love, forgiveness, and a home. See, that's God. That's a picture of God. Don't let people occupy that real estate because you haven't forgiven them. It doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means you're now offering them what God offers. You see them differently. You will not carry the burden anymore because your burden has been lifted. Would you pray? Father God, it is a prayer of thanksgiving that we have forgiveness and grace. All of us here, our feet would be clean in your presence because you would wash them. But you've done a greater thing. You've washed our souls. You've cleansed our hearts. You've made us new from the inside out. Help us, Father, to be more like you, and help us to accept the grace and forgiveness we've been given. May we give it to others as freely as you've given us the gift. In Jesus' name.